We are sitting in our greenhouse where we have started planting all of the food that we'll be growing this year. We wanted to show you how we took into account the 3 R's of food security in doing so. Those 3 R's being resilience, resistance, and redundancy. As you can see, we have a lot of seedlings already started.
Well over 1,000 plants that we have started in here, and that is no joke. This is what we start every single year. Not all of these plants will actually be planted into our gardens. Some of them will die, some of them will be runts, and many of them we give back to our community by either selling them or just gifting them to people.
That's part of how we are contributing to our local community and trying to build up this homesteading community here. Another factor of redundancy that we're incorporating this year in the greenhouse is multiple ways of pest management. So we've had an aphid problem in here,
which we now have largely under control.
We knew that if we didn't remove all the plant matter, we couldn't remove all of the aphids. And so we decided we wanted a backup plan to have another way of controlling them.
We brought in an army.
Yes, we brought in a little vial that includes a mixture of natural native parasites of aphids. So these things are slowly hatching out of there. A few different species have already hatched, and they are just attacking these aphids that are still on the plants that we have in here.
It's pretty cool to watch because they just full on go at the aphids.
And put their babies in them.
Yeah, and they do. They plant their seed inside of the aphids.
And so we're really hoping to incorporate even more methods as we go along. Just because this greenhouse is in an unnatural environment, and so we really need to place in here the predators of the things that are eating our plants.
And a lot of these things, once it warms up and it's no longer winter here, we'll be able to bring in some species that are just found around here, like ladybugs, for example, possibly praying mantis if we can manage to trap some of those. And there will be other things that we find that we can bring in as well to take care of the aphids and possibly any other pests that end up in here.
Yeah, it's unlikely it's just going to stop at aphids.
No.
When you make a beautiful, protected environment for plants to grow, that also brings the things that want to eat those plants.
Yes, because it is a lovely environment. It's a very nice place to sit in the middle of the winter and catch some sunshine, sit beside the wood stove.
And having these extra measures of redundancy and measures of our pest control also makes this greenhouse and this ecosystem in here more resilient. So that can bring us on to some of the measures that we're taking to have a more resilient food crop this year.
Seeds, a big one. So we've mentioned before that we save a lot of seeds from the various produce that we grow. And the majority of what is growing in here right now is from that saved seed. There are some new things that we've started in here, which interestingly are actually not germinating that well in this environment.
So having seeds that came from plants that we grew in this environment means that they are adapted to this environment. So they'll be more resilient to weird fluctuations in weather that we tend to get here that might not have happened to plants that were grown in different types of environments.
And usually under the absolute ideal environment is where your seed packs that you buy in the stores are coming from. They're coming from large breeders and they're being bred in the perfect environment, which is why a lot of folks maybe struggle with germinating their seeds when they buy seeds if they don't have that perfect environment that the seeds are used to, that the genetics are used to germinating in and to grow in. And a lot of these plants that we have been growing for the last 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 years and saving the seeds and continuing to build up that knowledge within the seed of where it's going to be growing and what that seed should expect throughout its life.
For example, we were mentioning in a previous video that we wanted to make sure that our celery plants went to seed. And that is because we wanted to have seeds from plants that survived and did very well in our environment.
These plants we planted over a year ago. Luckily, these celery plants that we have saved, that we grew in the greenhouse over the winter, have now gone to flower, which is awesome. Now we just have to keep them alive and make sure they go through that process of flowering, pollination, and then finally the seeds that we can save to carry on. Because celery produces a lot of seeds, we probably won't need to do this again for another 2, maybe 3 years.
In addition, just the fact that we are starting the seeds and the seedlings inside this greenhouse and allowing them to establish and become healthy plants before we put them outside is adding some resiliency to the crop. Because if we were just plant them outside, they would not be established enough to be able to regrow due to adverse weather conditions or any disease outbreaks. Another thing we do in the greenhouse is we constantly have the fan blowing on them.
Very important and often overlooked by growers that start their seeds inside, maybe just beside a window or under a small light. They need that airflow and they need that wind just to get the stems swaying back and forth, which is going to help strengthen them. And eventually you'll see them just slow down in how much they waver in that wind, because you're going to be putting them outside and subjecting them to a lot of wind. And when you do that, if your plants aren't adjusted already to the wind, they're just going to collapse, they're going to flop all over the place, potentially the stem's just going to snap and the plant's going to fall over, and that's it for all your lovely little baby plants that you've started.
The last R is resistance. Just the fact that we are here planting most of the food that we're going to be eating this year allows us to be resistant to disturbances in the global food supply chain. By doing this every year, we also get to have a good measure of what inputs we still depend upon that might come from that global supply chain, or that we can move then towards from our community or from ourselves. Some of those inputs being the heater that we have set up here for when we don't have the stove going, and artificial lighting.
Both of these are used at a minimum. The heater is set on a thermostat, which, I mean, it comes on just sporadically throughout the night, really. Daytime, the sunshine heats this place up just fine. It's probably about 20 degrees in here right now. The lighting, you can see over here, that's the only lighting that we're currently running in here. We will probably update that a little bit. We have more lights that we could set up that we've run in the house before. But for now, that's the only thing we've been running. And really, I've only been running that because celery really needs light to germinate. It's one of those weird, finicky plants that actually needs light as opposed to just heat or warmth in the soil for the seeds to germinate.
Our current seed bank isn't enough, so every year we're buying more seeds with the intent of growing them in order to collect seeds from them.
Heirloom seeds. Pay attention to the seeds you purchase. Purchase heirloom seeds. A lot of the hybrids out there that you can buy the seed for at the seed shops, when you save the seeds from those fruits or from those plants, it may not come back the following year when you plant those seeds to be the same thing that you grew the previous year.
For example, if you want to have peppers that mature into orange peppers, if you get heirlooms, they're more likely that you're going to get orange peppers next year, rather than with hybrids, they could be ones that never mature orange. They could be yellow, red.
They could be itty-bitty little things.
This way, you get rid of a lot of the uncertainties when you go with heirloom seeds. Well, you know what they say about a watch pot. I think the same thing accounts for seedlings. Let's get out of here, let them grow, and let our army of parasites get to work.
They don't like to be watched.
No.
They like their privacy.